Hello, world.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi.
world.
Are we ready to talk how to go into the Matrix and become iTunes?
What?
Oh, is that
That's
what
what
we're
this
doing?
panel's about, how to digitally transform yourself into
How
iTunes.
how to become
Yeah,
iTunes?
once you're a table, and then you go iTunes. Tabletop
First, you
to
have to top
iTunes.
squadrons. Yeah,
Okay.
Top squadrons.
I'm just talking. I just say the words. I don't know.
Used words.
Words.
What even are they?
Who
What?
knows?
What even are they?
Alright, the stream is up. I guess for this one, we're going to talk about how to take your actual play to the next level. Oh,
Living room to iTunes. How to transition from at-home gaming to actual play podcasting.
in this panel, I'm going to be making up advice, so be aware some of it's not going to be real advice. Like, even though we
We'll
called
let you
this
know
living room to iTunes, you should never do it in a living room because furniture makes sounds that we can't detect, but the microphones can.
because everyone knows couches are alive.
Nick,
I
Nick, your
mean, like
face.
that is true about like some things though.
Yeah,
It is
there's
actually.
actually things in your house
Refrigerators.
that will make noise. So
Yes.
like that is something to actually keep in mind.
My face was mostly just at you saying you can't detect the noise because you usually can. You just are used to it.
Your dogs
Uh,
will hear it.
well, and like the chairs that we record in right now, we have two quiet chairs and two chairs that make noise when you reposition, and we put the two people who reposition the most in the reposition noise chairs
Yes.
as I reposition.
Oh
Uh,
no.
Valid point, Hudson.
Whoops.
I am Lilith, and Lilith is Cameron.
This isn't. Oh
Hmm.
no. Okay, I
oh
switched.
no.
You all may continue as I.
We've switched names
Oh
today.
right. Uh Also, we were supposed to have a guest on this panel, Rob Stith of the Orpheus Protocol. It's a good show if you like horror because it is a horror podcast. Uh, and I have an official statement from him of why he's not here today and advice.
My fellow
And that
Uh-oh.
Americans.
statement is I was going to be on the panel, but then I had 7 recordings in 4 days. And my best bit of advice is not that. Don't.
Oh, Rob. Yeah, that was when
We
we.
wish him the best in his editing endeavors
Good luck. That.
because yeah, he did. And for at least two of those, no, one of those recordings, he has less than a week to edit and produce it before it goes up. So he is busy.
Rob is like easily top three hardest working people in podcasting, I
Yeah,
think. Uh,
almost certainly.
I am no thank you. I struggle with one episode every 2 weeks.
Uh, to be fair, you work a full-time job, whereas podcasting is one of Rob's like full-time jobs.
Which Rob does remind me from time to time when I try to like do this. But the other thing to keep in mind too is like even if I wasn't working full time, I don't think I have that kind of attention span. I don't think I can edit that much stuff in one go. I'll melt into my chair. So
Yeah, but Rob did look over our agenda for this panel and approved it and added some good ideas. So, still giving him credit. And again, the Orpheus Protocol. Check it out. It's on iTunes and all the other podcasting apps. So,
wherever podcasts are sold.
this panel, uh, again, it is from transitioning from home RPG play to actual play podcasting and some of the differences you might encounter in that move and some of our personal ideas on do's and don'ts for that. We're not really going to do like general starting a podcast advice uh, unless we have extra time at the end for questions, and then we might answer like more general ones. But for the most part, we're going to try to stick to the topic. And first up, know your players and friends and who's reliable. Uh, when you are doing an at-home game, it's a lot easier to just say, oh, we won't play this week. We'll pick it up some other time. But when you have a podcast and a schedule, that stuff starts getting out of hand real fast.
Yeah. The other thing to keep in mind with that is as you will be spending a lot of time with these people and doing a kind of job with them, make sure it's people that you like and that complement your abilities and are patient with and that are patient with you. Oh god, make sure they are patient with you. Speaking from experience, it's just like starting anything. Like, it's a group you're going to be with for a while. Even the Beatles broke up over time, so like understand that there will be some stuff there. We've actually been very good at that. I haven't had to use my middle manager skills at all
So,
with this group,
so
but that's surprising.
if we're the Beatles, who's our Yoko?
Fry.
Fry.
Fry? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely Fry. I don't even know where he is.
Oh
He's
no.
lying in
Concerning.
wait. Gonna strike at the worst possible moment.
Probably.
I don't know why I looked. My door's closed.
The other thing I would say on the choose people that you want to play with and that are reliable front is, if the world exploded tomorrow and I had to start a podcast from scratch, God forbid, but if that was a thing I decided to start from scratch again, I would probably play a game with whatever group I wanted to play with first before I started recording, just to get a feel for people and like get a vibe. Like, much better to take some time and get into it. Like, we all played together for freaking 3 years before we broke out microphones, which it doesn't necessarily have to be that long, but at least play like an arc or
Yeah.
something. Uh,
Yeah.
it'll make your life a lot easier.
Just to make sure play styles mesh
Mhm.
and that everyone is on the same page, which does bring into the a more intense session 0 and talking about long-term expectations, establishing roles, tones, themes, and styles, because you don't want to get into your first session and realize that half your players thought this was going to be a very serious, dramatic podcast, and your other players thought it was going to be jokes and dick jokes and 420.
I don't see the issue.
You want to make sure that it's a style that everyone in the group is going to enjoy playing and that everyone's expecting the same thing.
No,
Nicholas.
I know. I'm just saying, like, I would happily do a super serious one where the main bad guy says "get wrecked" as beheading his final enemy or whatever. But no, I'm trying to be funny. It's not being successful. It's a very valid point. Like, you need to,
Establishing tone.
yeah, tone's super important. Well, and like, think about a lot. Hopefully most of the people watching this panel listen to podcasts, but like, think about how many podcasts you stay with because of the consistent tone. It's probably most of them. The ones that you fall off on are probably the ones that went from like, oh, we're a wild space adventure, to here's 7 episodes at a beach resort where we play volleyball, and like that kind of whiplash could be not ideal.
And even just past like tones and themes, just general long-term expectations of how often do you want to release a show? What
Mhm.
kind of scheduling do you want to do? Are you trying to get a backlog? Who's going to do what for the show? And if you ever get big enough that you can have a Patreon, how are you going to divvy up those funds? What are your future goals? Because you should talk about your possible future goals at the start.
Yep.
And it's usually not a thing you do with a at-home RPG game. You tend to not go, okay, so we are playing this game. What happens if we make money off this game that would never happen because it's our living room game.
But what if we did?
What if we did?
This home game of 7th Sea brought to you by Monster Energy.
Which goes a little bit into sharing tasks. It's not just for the game host. I think a lot of people assume that because in an at-home game, when you're just playing with a group, the GM, your game host, game master, whatever, tends to be the one doing most of the work unless it's a specifically collaborative game that's like designed to be that way. But when you move your group to podcasting, it's a lot of different things for one person to handle. And the only people or the only successful podcast I listen to where it's just one person doing all the work is where it's that one person's full-time job. Like everything else, people divvy it up. You know, somebody handles social media, somebody handles the website, somebody does editing, and because like it's a lot of work.
Yep. What I was saying earlier, I could barely handle an episode every 2 weeks. That's actually like, unless we're trying to do something out of the ordinary, that's the cap. That's what we can expect as my output, because anything past that, I stop being fun to be around, and also like don't get much more done than that. That's about what I can handle with my job and everything. We're I'm so lucky with this group that we just happen to have a very diverse set of skills. We have 2 other very talented editors and someone else who probably could be an editor if we would just show him how. And then
I wouldn't be as good as you all. I could do it though. I
you could
technology.
do it. Yeah, and like you do
Yeah.
video editing, it's actually easier than that. So like that hasn't happened yet. But like we have web hosting, we have social media expertise, we have multiple good writers. Like we have art. Like this particular group means that I get to focus on the part I like, which is some editing and then also like making the adventure and stuff. So yeah, be thinking about like what people can contribute, because if you try to do it all yourself, you will melt. And it's like until you get to a point where it's your job, which is not likely if you look at the society that we're in. It's supposed to be fun, which we often remind each other. Like it's still like a thing you're doing for fun. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's good that we planned all that stuff out ahead of time for the most part, and I think that audio editing, when you get into it, just this is sort of third person perspective, and y'all should comment more, but like it's a lot harder than you think it is because there's a lot you have to do with like cleaning up the audio and deciding what content to keep or throw away and all this stuff.
Ooh, we have some stuff about that. Of
Oh, good.
let's see.
What a great segue, Hudson.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for your segue, unintentional or not. Which does bring to audio quality, which is something that you tend to not care about at all in a living room game, and or at most you're just trying to make sure that your players can hear you if you are like doing it online or something. But for a podcast, you do need to care about audio quality. That's one of the biggest things that drops people out of a show is audio quality. Like if I'm asking people why they stopped listening to certain shows, one of their number one answers is audio quality. If they're like, well, I listened to the first few episodes, but the audio quality was really bad, so I stopped. And yeah, some people might not care about that, but enough will that it's something you should focus on. And a lot of that involves getting rid of some of the stuff that you rely on in an at-home game, snacks and drinks. It's not ASMR. Don't be eating chips.
It's very interesting to
Wow.
hear you, Lilith, say, "Yeah, don't ASMR your podcast." When
Which, okay.
Hey,
Wait,
sometimes the editor's going to cut it
this
out, so it's fine.
this segues into another one. But like snacks and drinks, don't consume them while you are actively playing, while you are actively role playing and everything. Like it is distracting for a listener, and some people really don't like the sounds of people eating. So keep that in mind. You know, stacking dice can be really fun during your living room game, but like that can be kind of noisy, and the click clacks can disrupt it. So like if you're going to have fidget items, they need to be silent or very low volume,
Worm.
thank you for the
or
wiggle
just
worm.
things like a lipstick tube where you can just kind of twirl it, but like you're not going to hear like clicky pen noises. Like no, avoid things that are going to click or make a lot of noise. Yeah, buddy, I know.
Oh, I got Lilu.
Oh,
Hi, Lulu.
ours are unconscious, so I
If you
don't
see me
want to.
bending over, it's because I'm petting Lilu or directing her around the room because she's trying to get into things.
Mm-hmm. And things like asking roommates if you have them to be quiet, not having the TV on in the background, not having music playing,
Having your phone
just
on silent.
phones on silent. Because, yeah, if you're playing a game with your friends, you might have music on to set the tone, but you don't want to record the music with you talking for a podcast because you might have to cut stuff and then your music ends up sounding really fucking weird and it's not going to come across microphone super great anyways.
Also, copyright laws.
And yeah, so add your music in after the fact if you are going to do that.
Ooh, good chat
Get that
comment.
good, clean audio.
Shut off your fans and AC, someone says.
Yeah,
Fans and
that
AC,
drone,
yes.
it gets
Like
old.
sometimes it's unavoidable. Like this summer, I've had games where I've told the host, like, I'm sorry, I'm not turning the AC off. It's 105 degrees outside. I'm not doing it. Like, I've turned it down so that, like, hopefully it'll be on for shorter periods of time. But, like, if we are going to be here for the next 6 hours, I, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. And the thing about like the ambient noise and everything is that you can filter a lot of that out as you get used to different editing techniques. But the more of the resources you spend filtering that stuff out, the less flexibility you have for like volume and tone and
Yeah.
pitch control because you've already modified it enough, it starts sounding robotic.
And a lot of it is work smarter, not harder. If you can just spend 30 seconds going around turning off your fan, turning off or turning off or down your AC, unplugging stuff, making sure your TV's off, that'll save you so much work later on because then you don't have to like go in and keep scrubbing audio and all of that. And like you're going to get unavoidable stuff sometimes of like a loud car going by. We live very close to the fire station. Like sometimes a fire truck goes by and we just kind of have to pause and
Or a
you
plane will
have
fly
to
over.
a plane, yeah, you have to get used to that of being cognizant of when there is that outside sound and pausing just so that you can wait it out and doing your best to get that clean audio. Things you just wouldn't think about during a living room game.
Yeah. A weird thing happened, I think might have been as long ago as last year, but some friends invited us over to play a game and there were drinks and snacks at the table. And I don't remember how to eat and play RPGs at the same time anymore
Yeah.
because I don't do it.
It's outside of drinking, like I don't know how to do it. And by drinking, I just mean either coffee or water. Which is another thing. Depending on what style of game you are playing, you might want to eschew alcohol altogether for your game because, like, yeah, for your living room game, it is really fun. Sometimes, like, if you are of drinking age and to have a few drinks and roll dice. but it's going to end up being kind of sloppy for audio. You're more likely to get distracted, and it's not going to create as nice of a listening experience unless you are going for a very loose, fun, silly game.
Yeah. I don't drink and GM anymore because very early on I drank and GM'd, and the problem is I still think I'm great, but my autofill turns off, so it takes forever because I'll be like, you walk into a like that square thing with a door. What is that? A room, and in that room and it's like not fun for anyone else. So I can't do that. I also don't really drink and play anymore either because we're not going to tell that story, but it didn't go well.
Oh.
It was
There it is. She
certainly
remembered
a
it.
night.
I
Fun
enjoyed it.
times.
It's a great story. Maybe during one of the Patreon hangouts we'll tell that story. But it if your goal is to have a good game and record a game that other people want to listen to, not necessarily just have a funny story your friends can break out when they want to embarrass you, uh, maybe don't. But again, like Lilith said, it does depend on what you're going for. If you want to play, hey, we're loose and sloppy fun times, then try it. See if people like it, or see if you like it, because that's the main thing. Like, no matter how many people are listening to it, you're the one who's putting a ton of time into it, so it should be something you enjoy.
Yes. And similar to this, side talk. Side talk can be really fun and useful during a game if someone is thinking about their move or having a more direct conversation with the game host. It's kind of easy for two players to just start chatting about something else or what they think they're going to do on their next move, especially like with combat and stuff, or just quickly ask someone like, "Oh, hey, you want to order pizza after this?" But with your game, that can cause things to get, off track. It can be disjointing to listen to while someone is talking about their combat. And in the background, you can just hear people discussing pizza toppings. And that can be a lot to like I've definitely dropped shows because they just had like excess conversations in the background that they kept in and didn't cut or just ask people to be quiet. And I was like, this audio is a mess and it's hard for me to listen to, because you have to remember that a lot of people who are like neurodivergent can't handle multiple conversations at once. uh like people who have ADHD often have audio processing issues, which means multiple conversations are really hard. Like if you are that kind of person who, if you're at a loud restaurant and there's people talking all over, you can't always hear the person sitting right next to you because your brain can't like zone out everything else. Your brain is like, no, someone's talking 40 feet away. We need to listen to them too. So like that background conversation can really pull a lot of people out of your show and cause them to stop listening.
Hmm.
So
Well, and
you
the
just
thing
have
is, even
to
if it
pull
doesn't
that down.
completely shut you down or whatever, it takes more energy to listen when you have to filter through. So
Yeah.
why you don't want to make your listening experience any more difficult than it has to be.
Well, and if you're recording in person, it makes editing more difficult too, if to have multiple conversations happening at the same time on different mics because you kind of bleed over into
Yeah, that
other things. So
audio
even if you're
bleed.
like, we want to cut
Mhm.
the pizza conversation, no pizza. Well, if you
Would
can still hear Nick on my mic, like right now, you can hear me on his mic. It's it's hard to cut that, and it's just kind of a ghost thing in the background, though, even if you remove the audio.
I mean, if you have a ghost podcast, that's what you're going for.
True, valid point.
Ghost Pizza podcast starting 2021.
Ooh, ghost pizza. We're having
Yep.
pizza
We're
tonight.
gonna get yeah, because it's movie night.
Yeah.
Uh,
I know we
so
discussed it in the chat as an illustration of what not to do while you were giving us very educational conversation.
but so definitely cut out like just train yourself to not do side talk while other people are talking. Side talk is fine if someone is like looking something up, like that more filler conversation, I guess is a way to put it. While someone is pulling up a character sheet, figuring out their dice pool, yeah, chat about something while that happens, but stop the moment they are ready to continue, and then cut that stuff for your audio, because that filler talk is really fun and a way to keep everyone from getting super bored during your game while someone looks up a rule, but it's not fun to listen to. Like, you might think it is, it really isn't. Cut it, because it just keeps things off topic, and sometimes if it's long enough, the listener will have forgotten what you're even doing. Because, like, I've definitely listened to shows where they go on a 5-minute rant about something while someone looks up a rule, and then they jump back in, and I'm like, what? Oh, yeah, they were swimming and someone was looking up the drowning rules. That's what was happening, right?
I've also had
So,
that happen as a player where we get distracted and we're like,
yeah.
wait, hold on. We were doing something prior to this conversation.
Our
But
show
so,
has so many
yeah.
bloopers that sit on the editing room floor of me going, okay, if y'all don't remember what we were doing, it's this.
But that's the nice thing about doing the podcast, is that you can edit around that stuff and create a cohesive listening experience for your audience.
Mhm.
You don't have to have your audience listen to your weird side jokes for 10 minutes while you look something up or somebody takes a bathroom break. Uh, the beauty of the medium is editing.
That's for the bloops.
Put it in bloops. Like, even if you don't plan on releasing them right away, if it's especially funny or a very good conversation, save it into a blooper reel, and maybe eventually you can release it, especially if you get enough listeners to do a Patreon. People love the bloops, and because that's meant to be that way, it's not as tonally disjointing. I'm not going to sing the blooper reel song though.
I typed it in the chat
Oh,
for you.
what?
Maybe later as a treat for the audience.
It's such a good song.
uh, so similar to the side talk, uh, and because the beauty of editing for a podcast, repeating lines, redoing flubs, and rewriting scenes. Because, like, I like how I have 4 fingers up. Thanks. I don't know. I just started with my thumb. I don't know. Because, yeah, if you're just playing in your living room, you might not redo a line if you mispronounced a word or flubbed a few times. You're just going to keep going, because, like, why would you stop to repeat that? But with a podcast, you really should, because you can just cut the mistake out, and then it's easier for the flow and to listen to.
Well, I'm sure the people who are in the lottery game this morning could tell you, I sound a lot more coherent. I sound a lot more coherent in the edited finished product that I do GMing live.
A perfect example.
Yes,
Yeah.
right there.
Honestly, that was a really
Thank you
good
for
one.
that. But, like, that's exactly why, like, edit your show, and then you don't have all the mistakes, and it sounds nicer, and it's a better flow, and it's more cohesive and nicer to listen to. And because, again, like, repeating lines over and over can get really distracting. And if you're going for a humorous podcast, yeah, occasionally leaving, like, really, really funny ones in can be fun, but you need to use them sparingly. Sprinkle it in, don't slab it on. Just a little pinch here and there.
Yep.
Which just kind of go back to the tone of your living room game. It's a lot easier to play with the tone because it's just your group listening. Like, it's just your people who are there playing. But when you have an audience, I mean, we can go into forever about, like, expectations of an audience or of an artist to a creator, and expectations of, like, do you really owe things to your audience, or are you allowed to do what you want? But it's a nice thing for your audience.
It's kind of like a whole nother panel is
It's a
getting
whole,
into that
yeah,
philosophy.
that's what I'm saying. Like, that's a whole nother panel. In short, no, as a creator, you do not truly owe anything to your audience, but then your audience does not owe anything to you. And if they want to drop support because they don't like the tonal shifts in your show from super serious to super silly, that's their prerogative then. So you just have to remember that it's kind of like a mutual back and forth of nobody owing anything to each other. So something to keep in mind. And let's see, where are we?
I don't know. I have the blooper reel song stuck in my head now.
Oh, things like rewriting scenes, because it's a show, you might have more of a overarching plot idea depending on what you're doing. And don't be afraid to go, you know what? We're not 100% happy with how that scene went. Let's redo it. Or like
We've done that.
yeah, like we've done that because we got there and we're like, ooh, at the moment, this kind of happened naturally. But now at the end of it, we don't like this. We don't want this for our show. Or there was a small mistake way back here that snowballed into a big thing that we don't like.
Yeah, we sometimes you can yes and yourself into a very uncomfortable place, and we have recorded and changed things
Yeah, that
to make it so that we were still comfortable with what our characters were doing.
like most big shows have admitted like they do that. Uh, like the McElroys of the Adventure Zone, if you haven't heard about it.
Yeah, who are they?
It's a very small indie show. Uh, like they've talked about how they redid a lot of their scenes that they had redone. I think they even said that they redid like a whole episode at one point because they realized they didn't like how it played, and they made some character just choices in it that looking back were things they wanted to do but didn't really fit the characters they had created. So they redid it and it's fine. Like, except that like a podcast kind of starts veering towards art and writing, and it's okay to change your mind.
You never want to try to dig yourself out of a storytelling hole. So like the Adventure Zone example, the one I'm thinking of is in the balance arc, they accidentally committed genocide at one point, like knowingly. And they finished that and then hung up the call and then came back and went, actually, this is like super messed up. Can we come up with a different solution for this? And it's like, yeah, because the thing is, at a home game, sometimes you end up like that's just how it goes, right? Like if you're improving stuff and you're being creative and things, sometimes stories go in weird places. And at a home game, you're like, ugh, I don't really like how that went, but we're moving on. For a podcast, though, it's forever. So, like, do you really want a recording of yourself destroying a whole civilization trapped in a crystal forever? That's like a thing that's going to continually come up.
Yeah.
So, be aware that you have an audience would be my advice. I know as a writer and as a person, since we've started the podcast, I've grown a lot being self-aware of like different stuff because before I could make a stupid joke and I might get some eye rolls about it, but like whatever, it's fine, it's my friends. But now like if I make a stupid joke, one, I've learned that those jokes are hurtful sometimes, but two, like you learn like that's going to be out there forever. So like when you do stuff, do it on purpose, you know? Like be aware of the fact that there's an audience. And my philosophy has always been like if you can choose your words in a way to not be hurtful, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And we've all had learning experiences.
And you don't even have to wait to rewrite a scene until like your players commit a genocide.
Yeah,
You
you
can
if you
just
could
do
do it
it for
before that,
something
that'd probably be good.
simple of like, you know, we did a shopping montage, but we don't entirely, we feel like it got a little boring and we want to do a shopping montage. So let's just redo it and change a few things to keep it more interesting.
Hmm.
Like, which brings us into one of the other ideas of treat your show a little bit more like a writer's room, agile development, uh,
Synergy.
synergy.
Don't do
Like
waterfall.
when you're playing in a living room game, you tend to you tend to not repeat stuff. You just kind of go, oh well, moving on. And with a podcast, you don't have to do that. Uh, take the time, uh, talk about things with everyone, and as like the game host, say like, hey, this is the idea I have for this session. What do you all think? And discuss like if that is really what you want to do or not. And like the players can say like, hey, I really wasn't expecting this to be combat. I thought we were going in this other direction. And talk about those things and figure out where you want things to end up.
Something from another So You Want to Podcast Your Game panel that we saw at Gen Con last year that was really good was from Ree, who's the showrunner and GM for Magpies. And Ree always has talked about before, like, hey, I used to be, it's a line I stole last night, but I used to be the one who likes to like surprise my players a whole bunch. But there's times when, as a GM, if you say, hey, by the way, this character is going to do this thing at some point, that the players can do more to foreshadow and help make the audience like lose their minds over something in a way that it just as a GM you can't do. And working that stuff in ahead of time is really like effective, and like trust your players to go with it. If it's a group that you're comfortable enough that you're podcasting with, like they're also very good storytellers. You should work
Yeah.
as a team. You can make it much better.
Surprise the listeners, not the players.
Look, I did a segue too, Hudson.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thanks.
It's almost like this is one we've talked about a lot.
Yeah, and this can be for like big plot things, like okay, Nick telling us, all right, this is where the finale is gonna be, or it could just be next session. I think the characters are gonna end up in this situation. Be thinking of how your character would react to that, because you want to maintain a consistent character, and if you have time to think about it and really like decide how your character would respond to that, it makes the actual session a lot smoother, because you don't have to take that pause and be like, actually, I have no earthly idea how Karma would react to this. That'll still happen occasionally.
Yeah.
But
And that's a nice thing about having the editing is that you can cut out all that empty space of someone thinking about what they want to do. And you can still sometimes surprise your listeners. Like Nick and I just played in a game earlier this week, Orpheus Protocol. We're on Orpheus Protocol now, so
Oh yeah, hey, by the way.
by the way, if you want to get to, also it's at like episode 170 or something, so like you will have a large backlog to get through, which a lot of people do like, because then it means you never run out of episodes to listen to.
Or at least not for a while,
Yeah.
depending on your
Uh,
consumption.
But I think we started at like episode 158, so we're there now. It's a fun time.
It's a
Great
time.
characters. No, it's fun. I mean, it's horrific, but in a fun way.
Yeah.
But like we were told things about like where the story was going to go so that we could make sure our characters were on the path to get there. Because like, okay, well, like your party is split. We're going to need you to, meet up at some point, and like this point over here is where you're going to meet up. So like make sure you're working towards that point. And so we were able to do that and not have to be like surprised that the parties meet back up. But then at the same time, there were some surprises for us as players, but those surprises didn't affect where we were going to go. Like they were things that were going to happen regardless of the choices we made. And that's kind of how you can decide of, is this something to surprise the listeners or something to surprise the players? Is will it happen regardless of your player choices? Then you can kind of surprise the players. But like, if it is highly dependent on your players reaching the shopping mall, maybe tell them that. Tell them like, hey, if you get to the shopping mall, Bigfoot will be at the Hot Topic, and then you can meet Bigfoot. Like, let them know. Then your players know. Well, yeah, if we want to go meet Bigfoot, I guess we have to get there.
The
And you
difference being if Tink is the son of Darth Vader, which he is, like that being revealed later, it doesn't matter where they are when they find that out. It's still influencing the plot. So
Father, why do you look like that?
I thought Tank was secretly a Palpatine.
Yeah.
yeah, and
Okay.
Palpatine is Darth Vader's dad, so
they keep flip-flopping on whether or not that's true. Palpatine and a Bigfoot.
mhm,
Tink's parents.
mhm.
Palpatine
I'll
and a
take
Bigfoot.
it.
There'll be more details
Yeah.
during the Sheev and Theodore Palpatine hour.
Oh my.
Mhm. So let's see. Have we talked about all our points? Oh, no previous inside jokes. Don't put your inside jokes into the show. Don't do it. Create new ones within your show. For example, Tabletop Squadron now has baby hands. Baby hands are our new inside joke that we can just be like, oh, baby hands. His hands are so tiny, so small, baby hands. Because your audience is not going to know your inside jokes from before the show. Like, if I just randomly shouted, Hudson, cheddar peppers to Hudson throughout the show, yes, Hudson and I are going to find that funny. Our friend Chad is going to find that funny. But nobody else is, because everyone else is going to be like, why the fuck are they saying cheddar peppers? And we'll have no idea. And it's not funny because it's only funny if you were there at the party one night in college where we just kept shouting at Hudson to make us cheddar peppers and he wouldn't.
Yeah, or that time that I said, I have Streetwise. If you watched our other panel, you will know what that means. There's a teaser for those who need to watch the Q&A panel. Or bring up the time Nick fucked a dragon. That's
Oh,
classic.
Like,
Classic.
those
Yeah.
things are funny for you.
Yeah.
But they can be really confusing for an audience who doesn't know what they are, and it can make them feel really lost. And you don't want your audience to be confused and lost unless that's like the goal of your show.
yeah.
Like if your show is meant to be lost and it's meant to be confusing and mysterious and like
Ooh.
why is there a smoke monster? What is the polar bear doing? Then yeah, your players can be confused, but it shouldn't be about the inside jokes. It should be like the plot.
Well, in the first few episodes, actually maybe in the prologues, I worked in a character from the last campaign. And that was fun for us, but it confused the audience because they're like, why are you laughing at this character? Like, what is that? And it led to a bunch of like analysis and stuff. We're like, whoa, 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 whoa. No, this is just funny because it's a character
Mhm.
that we like from before. So like it's something to be really
Yeah.
aware of.
And like you can always work your inside jokes in,
Street
but they
smarts.
need to be under the radar. Like it needs to just be a flat like, oh, I have Streetwise, so I can do that role. Don't make like a huge deal out of it. Just know that like, okay, yeah, 4 people will get that reference and find it really funny, but don't like do 30 seconds of everyone laughing and then go like, oh, haha, it's an inside joke. We're not going to explain it. You're just alienating your audience, and that's not a good time. Your audience should be in on your jokes. So make new ones. Figure out like what, just do your show. People will pick up on things. And you have baby hands. Nick, his hands are so small.
Yeah, well, whose fault is that?
I
They are
forgot
so
who said
small.
they were small. Didn't you
They're
say that,
never
Nick?
gonna be able to catch ghosts. They
Yeah.
are too small. The ghost will just go right through the hands.
Y'all are mean.
No.
I have a dog.
Oh, it's a
That is
doggo.
okay.
Look at it. It's very
Here's a
good.
tail.
Let's see. I think we have gotten through everything on our list. Do we want to do questions?
I think we
Or
could do some
not?
questions.
Just no questions. We
Yeah.
just sit here for
I
the next
mean,
15 minutes.
Let us sit in silence.
Meditate.
All right. Ask your questions in the chat, and we will get through them with our remaining time.
While people are asking questions, I know Nick asked a question in chat earlier, which was what toppings for the pizza.
Oh, I was gonna type it again. You beat me to it.
So I'm gonna get a Laura breaker.
Yeah. Speaking of inside jokes.
Yep, inside jokes. It's a pan pizza that is half pepperoni and double cheese across all of it, and
So the reason why I dislike it is because you used to always order 2 of them for parties.
Instead of just one pepperoni and one cheese.
yeah,
Double
because
cheese is
it just
important.
it makes more sense that way somehow.
Does it?
Oh,
If you're just ordering the one, if it's just the one, it's fine, and I don't really care about it. It's when you ordered 2, and it was like, why not just order 1 pepperoni and 1 double cheese? And because like
It doesn't taste the
they
same.
cook differently.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the thing is, like, when you add the
Okay, yeah.
toppings, they put more time on how, like, on the oven for when it goes through, because the toppings affect how the cheese cooks.
It's because
then-
Hudson wants double cheese and overcooked cheese.
Yes.
So when you put the toppings on it, the cheese side ends up
Guys,
more
we need to
cooked
stop this side talk. Let's get
than
back
the
to the
topping
question.
side.
No, Lilith, I understand at this point it's more for the lulls than for actual reasoning.
Yeah.
But you make a lot of you make good points. Tech Dude TX asked a question. Yeah.
Christopher asked,
Yeah.
earlier in the panel, you mentioned about goal setting. If you're comfortable sharing, what are some goals you have set for the podcast and how did you meet them?
They can all be seen on our Patreon.
I mean, but those are the Patreon goals, and those are more of the monetary ones of like,
Yeah.
we were able to hire a transcriptionist because transcripts are something you should ideally work towards. And like, it unfortunately takes a lot of time. And if you yourself have audio processing issues, it can be really hard to make the transcripts yourself. But like, you should pay the people who make your transcripts because like that's work for them. And I have a lot of opinions on doing crowdsourced volunteer transcripts for your show because that's something your show should be providing. And it's like, if you're going to do that, you should pay the people who do work, kind of like art. Like, yeah, if your fans want to do free art, like that's great. But if you are specifically asking for very specific types of art, you should be paying the people. So I think our Patreon goals were just mostly the transcripts.
Yeah, we did a Twitter follower goal to have our pizza party.
Yes.
That was pretty good.
And a lot of those were like external goals of like
It's just
getting
fun.
to a certain number of followers on Twitter, which we are like 3 followers away from passing 400. So like, tell your friends about the show.
Ooh.
We're really
I'm
close.
jealous the show has more Twitter followers than I do now. For a while, that was not the case. How dare it?
So like, there's external goals of like your Patreon, how many social media followers you have, stuff like that. But then there's also the internal goals of, we want our show quality to hit a certain point. We want to get to a point where there's no background noise. We want to add more music into the show. Those
We
sort
want
of things.
We want to have a backlog of a specific size.
Yeah, a backlog is super nice to have.
Yes.
I remember when we had one of those.
Yes. And then
We'll get back to it
obviously,
eventually.
What
Backlog
you
truly is the most mysterious cryptid.
Everyone podcasts to get filthy rich. It's a fact, and that's where we're headed.
You won't make money off of
One mug at a
podcasting.
time. We are not. Yeah, you won't really make.
Like, you really probably won't. Do not expect to be the McElroys. It's not going to happen. Uh,
Well, they're about as successful as possible, and even they are like moderately comfortable. They're not,
yeah,
it's
like,
not
understand
filthy rich.
when you're making your goals, how the audience that you get will largely depend on the audience you already have. The McElroys already had a huge audience from their other works before doing the Adventure Zone. And like, that's a big starting point of, if you already have 30,000 followers on Twitter, you're going to get a much bigger audience than when I think I had 150 followers on Twitter when we started the show. And like, that's not a lot of listeners.
Yeah. I know one of the cool things about our podcast that we've always had as a goal and that we worked really hard towards for Tabletop Squadron is having a inclusive and supportive community. So while we are not the adventure zone, I think
Sometimes it's better
yeah.
not to
Uh
throw shade at certain larger, more popular shows, not one that's using D&D and mostly professional voice actors or anything. But like, we set goals to, if we receive negative feedback about things that we can change, we're going to actually change that.
So, like, medical throw. I don't know. I can't think of the name of it.
Mythical throw. Wow.
Medical throw.
Medical throw.
It's
Anywho,
about being a baseball sports trainer.
next
Medical
Medical
throw is
question.
one of the podcasts that Tink listens to.
Medical throw.
Pirate
what's your-
Rowan asks,
yeah.
"What's your favorite thing that's different between living room and podcast?"
My favorite thing, so I think I've told this story, but I'll tell it again. The one of the reasons I wanted to start a podcast is because whenever I saw my brother or a couple of my friends that we used to play D&D with, we would spend the entire time we were together just talking about our campaigns. And one of the nice things about this one being recorded is that our conversations like, hey, I really like this part, and then we move on and we talk about like other stuff, which is kind of fun. Or I get to spend more time listing that. But it's really cool to have like the more serious version of that is it's very cool that we are like doing this adventure and telling the story and like we've shared that with people and other people like it, and hearing like positive reactions to characters and character choices is super cool. I think that's what I like the most, like for our characters to do something, or even for like one of the villain NPCs for me personally, people being like, freaking hate that guy. I'm like, yes, we did it.
I think there was another. Was there another question? I
Well, I
forgot.
I think one of the podcast has made us adult better, I think. Like it's it's
Please elaborate.
we're just better adults now. Um
Okay, thanks.
no, but like having the release schedule and stuff, it does, if like we never really had issues with, like, we had a regular scheduled game night each week, but it does help make sure that you're playing the game because you need to record the stuff so that you can put out the episodes. But I really like the community aspect of the podcast because it's fun. Y'all are cool people. I like talking to y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not you, Nick. Them.
Oh, that's what I meant.
Woo.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Woohoo. Oh yeah, we only
Uh,
do have to sell 59,993 more mugs. That's right, Miller Duck.
oh yes. For anyone who was not here for, was it the Q&A
Q&A
last
panel.
night?
Yeah.
Yes.
Nick's car is falling apart,
It's
and
fine.
I jokingly said that if I sell enough of I said specifically the hot jizz mug, but I guess really it could be any of the mugs. that if we sell enough of those, I'll just buy Nick a new car. So we got to sell like 60,000 mugs
Someday.
one of these days. Uh,
Is this con just going to be days of us making fun of Nick?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
yeah, it will be.
There's a whole panel
Absolutely.
dedicated to it. I mean, I'm not on it, but
No, that's a even debate from respectful and even ground because
Is
both
it
people
though?
have good opinions, especially me.
Mm,
out
I'm
about
not
that.
Anyways,
concerned.
I believe it is tomorrow at 3. Can You Aim Grenades the panel? You really should go watch
It's
it.
fine.
It'll be great.
I have the high ground,
Uh,
says Miller Duck.
yeah.
Something we kind of talked about a little bit with the stricter scheduling earlier, and then Cameron mentioned podcasting creating more of like a standard schedule for recording and stuff. One thing to keep in mind is that you should strive for a regular schedule release. Don't be afraid if you have to push that back because of life stuff to do it. Just keep in mind that if your schedule is very inconsistent and you take huge breaks, then like you won't necessarily lose listeners because like the vast majority of your listeners will just like add you on their podcast app and just leave you, but they're going to be less likely to recommend you to their friends and less likely to shout you out when people are asking for shows, because if you haven't put out an episode in 4 months, they're not going to be thinking about you. So like that's where like the stricter scheduling comes in, is like if you don't play a game for 2 months with your living room group, you're usually fine. But if you don't do that with your podcast group, you're going to be more likely to forget what was happening. And then you're going to get there and you're going to realize that you all dropped a whole bunch of threads from the previous episode unintentionally because you just like forgot about them. And it's going to be harder to keep that up. And a lot of your listeners might just like lose interest over time. But at the same time, don't hurt yourself putting out the show. Like, be nice to yourself. And if it has to be a day or two late, that's fine. If you have to occasionally skip a week, that's fine. But trying to reach for that goal of a schedule is where you should be at.
Yeah, and don't be like, we have to do weekly, because that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Don't.
start out slow because like it's really easy to aim for a weekly session for your living room group. Uh, all the games I've run have always aimed for that weekly session, because when you're doing the weekly session, you're gonna skip a lot because people are like, oh well, I can't because of work this week. Uh, no, don't do weekly releases when you're first starting on podcasting unless your show is like a 20-minute, like really easy to edit show. But like most actual play podcasting isn't like that. But like the 20-minute discussion podcasts are easy to do weekly, not an hour long AP podcast.
And just
Mhm.
AP in general is some of the harder editing that
Yeah.
I've watched happen. You have multiple tracks, you have to like make it cohesive, you have editing to do. There's a lot there. So uh, what we did is we recorded all of the prologues first and had them all edited and started recording and doing the main episodes before we ever released to build that backlog to start. And that's a good way to get a feel for like the backlog or the flow of what you're doing. We also, there was a point where we were recording like 12 episodes out from where we were releasing. And for us personally, that was too much because it felt like two different stories. Like I was editing a different story than we were recording, and it was hard to keep them straight. So everybody has like what's the straight thing that connects 2 points?
A
A
line.
line.
A line.
I
Everybody
was
has
gonna
like a
say a
line to
sweet spot. Find
that
your
that sounds good too.
Goldilocks spot of for you personally, because I know some shows that have like a 4-month backlog and they're fine with that. So it's just like your personal group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How much playtime goes into each episode?
Hour,
From the time we hit
something.
play to the time we hit stop, anywhere from 70 to 120 minutes usually. Um, we usually hang out and eat beforehand and do some other stuff. So usually it takes us about an hour to get rolling. And then we try to do between 1 and 3 episodes. When we started, we always did 3, and then we 2 is about the sweet spot for our group. We tend to do about 2 these days.
And sometimes it'll just depend on the day.
Mhm.
Sometimes I would say you tend to end up cutting at least 25% of the time. Like if our recording is 60 minutes, I would say at usually that gets cut to 45 at least. And it might depend on your editing style. I cut more than Nick does. That is just like it's just your editing style. So like if Nick is given 60 minutes, I would assume it's usually like down to 45. If I'm getting 60 minutes, it tends to go more to 40.
Mhm.
And
It's
some
also
of
going to
that
vary
is
based on
yeah.
what's happening in the episode, because combat episodes tend to cut down a
Oh,
lot
a
more.
lot more.
But if you're doing like
Yeah.
a mostly we're just talking and role playing episode, those
Go
we
faster.
tend to stay in character better.
Mhm. And it depends on how many. You know those moments in your RPGs where every character has a good idea at once and they're all talking? That is very
like
hard to edit.
yeah, how much
But if
side talk you
Mhm.
have
Well,
and
just like the overlap and everything, people want to talk, and that's fine. But it's harder to edit. You have to kind of make those all work out in a way that's intelligible. But if you have like one character monologuing, that's super easy to edit and it doesn't cut down that far. My chair's rotating because
oh,
Batman is pushing on my legs to spin me around. So that's why I'm like
yeah.
weirdly spinning here. But yeah, it just kind of depends. For us, it's those time frames, but it varies and it depends on the group too.
Yeah, some
When we
groups are
had
gonna have
four,
more. Mm-hmm.
and when we had 4 players instead of, geez, dude, when we had 4 players instead of 3, it took more because there were more players at the table. The less players you have, a little bit simpler it'll be.
Usually, sometimes it'll just vary. I feel like
Yeah.
that's the answer. It's very dependent on a lot of factors. Sometimes you're just in a silly mood and you need to go on a lot of little side talks and make a lot of jokes that will get cut from the final episode. Uh, if you are doing a very, very serious show, sometimes making jokes that will get cut can help you as the player from getting too bogged down in the sadness. That's something we do a lot for Orpheus is really serious, intense shit will happen. And then someone has to make a joke to cut the tension. And like that joke will get cut and put into the bloopers. But I've noticed that sometimes the more serious the episode is, the more of those we have.
Mhm.
Uh,
Well, and like I know for our group specifically, the longer it's been since we recorded, the less
yeah.
productive the first episode we record is because we haven't seen each other in a while.
And sometimes it's just the us taking a lot longer to figure out what we want to do. Like us
Mhm.
having that discussion of, oh, last episode is this what we did? Did we do combat last episode? Okay. And then going from there and just uh cutting all that stuff.
Yep.
So it'll
Um,
change. I've edited episodes where I cut over 50% of the raw audio we had. Uh, I think I think the Dread Halloween episode, I think that was like near 3 hours of raw audio. And I think that's almost it's like an hour episode or something.
The episode I'm editing right now, I have 12 minutes of finished audio and have cut 35 minutes out of the total
Yeah.
runtime. So, uh,
Sometimes that just happens.
but I learned a
And
lot about South Park, so that was good.
oh
yeah,
yeah.
that happened. Um,
Gone.
so we
Oh, the Dread Halloween episode is 2 hours I think we had 4 hours of raw audio on that one. Like I cut half at least off that episode. Uh and but then I've also had episodes like side stuff where we cut like 15 minutes off of like an hour and a half episode. And like,
I think we're out of time,
we are.
Yeah.
but in a little less than an hour, there's going to be an awesome panel, followed by another awesome panel almost immediately after that. What are the panels? They are Aaron Katana Sayaz
Okay.
with the group world building through character creation,
Yes.
5 o'clock Central, followed by an hour later at 6 o'clock, the big Star Wars quiz show, which is going to be awesome. That's that's a big one. And then,
It'll be fine. We all know Star Wars.
Oh, please join us for both panels. Aaron is amazing,
mhm,
and All My Fantasy Children, uh, which is a world building through character creation show, pretty much. Uh, he's great. Definitely join it. You'll learn a lot about how your characters inform the world that you create. And then please join us for the quiz show. I found some really great trivia for this, and we have guests for our teams. Uh, Aaron will be joining us again for the quiz show on Hudson's team. It'll be great.
yeah.
Uh,
Oh, and Muller Duck brought up a good point. Visit the vendor hall. We have a series of vendors. They've been great this year.
visit the vendor hall at bit.ly/tabletop shop.
Yes.
I was
Our
gonna
T
cast some
Public
shade
store.
on the pretzels.
Hey, I made pretzels like last week, and they didn't turn out great because I don't know. I tried using a specifically sourdough recipe, and it wasn't pretzels.
Yeah.
I feel like that happens sometimes with like American pretzel recipes. Is they're like pretzels are just a bread, so we're just making a soft bread and putting it into a pretzel shape, and you're like, no, real German pretzels should not be squishy soft. Why is it like that? No.
I was just trying to cast shade on the fictional pretzel vendor at our dealer hall. But I wasn't trying. I'm smart
You're
enough
throwing
not
shade at
to
me, Nick.
criticize your cooking. Are you? No.
The
Okay.
pretzels were still tasty.
They were good.
Yeah.
They just weren't the kind of pretzels that I wanted. I wanted like chewy outside. Like I wanted a good solid German pretzel. And
Now
it's
I
just
want
not what
pretzels to go with my pizza tonight.
maybe I'll do pretzels next week and drop some off. We'll see.
Yes.
Maybe.
Also, uh, our panels have been free. You did not have to buy a ticket to come to our con or buy tickets to see the individual shows.
If you did, oh man,
if you
who's ripping
did,
you off?
figure out who you bought a ticket from and ask for your money back.
Go beat them up.
Go talk to them.
Metaphorically.
And we are not going to plug our own links. Instead, there is a bit.ly link in our about section on Twitch.
Yes.
It's also bit.ly/tabletop donate, and is a list of all sorts of organizations and funds to donate to, various organizations, things ranging from like Planned Parenthood to the Ochre Project, to the Navajo COVID-19 Relief Fund. There are also cards that have like non-monetary educational resources for different things that are happening around the world. So please go check those out if you can. Donate what you would have spent on a bad vendor hall pretzel,
Yeah, that
or
seems
more if you
fair.
can. But like, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much, and we will see you all we will see in 2 hours.
About 50
Everyone,
minutes.
yeah, 50 minutes for Aaron, and then an hour and 50 minutes for everyone else.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.